In this video, we'll cover some of the functions and setup of the anatomy database in Sierra Summit 3.1. When you're using the navigator in 3.1, it's important to understand its relationship with the anatomy database and how to set those things up together to improve your workflow. So in the navigator, one option you have is to check the box for common muscles, and that reduces the list to just muscles that you commonly use. Further, if you filter by a specific anatomical location, that shortens the list even more. So having your different anatomical locations set up with the appropriate common muscles will really improve how long it takes you to look through a list of muscles. Double clicking on a region will actually add the common muscles right into your study window. So it'll actually add all three of those muscles because they're set up as common. Or you can just filter through and just click the muscles that you want. So it's important to take the time to set up your anatomy database so that the appropriate muscles are shown when you select common. Same thing with nerves. You also have a common list of nerves. So depending on what anatomical location is selected, if you select common, it will give you a reduced amount of nerves to look at. In the nerves tab, it only shows nerves that have associated tests with them. So if there's not a test set up for that specific nerve, it will not show up in this list. And then of course, single fiber EMG also has its own common muscle list. And then rep stim, if you're using the rep stim tab or RNS, also can have its own common muscle list. On top of that, in the anatomy database, you can set up which muscles or nerves appear when you pick a specific region. So when I pick this shoulder region, I can decide which muscles show up in this list or which muscles show up in this list for the forearm region. So that's all controlled in the anatomy database. On top of that, in NCS Plus, we use the anatomy database to set up your tests. So you'll have a database of access points, which are stim sites or recording sites associated with different nerves to set up your test setup. That allows us to set up reference values for specific and anatomical locations so that when you do a test that has the nerve with the appropriate access point, you can have a reference value set up for that particular site. So to get into the anatomy database editor, I'm going to go into the home screen, and we'll go to Setup and the Test Protocol Setup. Edit Test Protocols will get you here as well. Any test that uses the anatomy database will have access to the editor. So EMG Plus, Single Fiber EMG Plus, NCS Plus, and RNS all use that database. You'll notice in EMG Plus, for example, you can decide whether to use a legacy muscle list or the anatomy database. If you use this, then you will have access to the editor. In NCS Plus, the anatomy editor has its own tab in the setup screen. So it doesn't matter where you go to access the anatomy editor because the same anatomy database is used across all protocols. So you can set that up anywhere, and it will, synchronize and be available in all the protocols where you're using it. So when you first open it up, you'll see your master lists of nerves. So your nerves, muscles, access points, trunks, divisions, cords. You can, it should be a pretty comprehensive list to start with, but you can always add, just hitting the plus sign will add nerves or muscles. You can also set specific muscles or nerves to be rarely used so that they don't clutter up your list. So if you go to muscles and there's a muscle that you don't use very often, you can highlight that muscle and then check the box rarely used. That will hide it from this main list, and it will only show up when you check the rarely used box. And then this will show all muscles, whether they're listed as regular muscles or marked as rarely used. So that's how you can hide a muscle and kind of clean up your list. Access points, this is where you add, again, this is your recording sites or stim sites, and this is where you can add access points and then associate them with a specific nerve. So if we look at, for example, a calf access point, it's associated with these three nerves, so all three of these nerves have that as an access point. If we go back to the Nerves tab, you'll see that if we click a nerve, like a median nerve, you can see right here a list of all the access points available. Right from here, you can add to that access point. So if we click add, it gives us that list, that master list of access points, so we can add additional access points to a nerve to be available. If the access point we're not looking, or that we're looking for, is not in this list, then we'll need to go into the access points master list and add that access point by hitting the plus sign and then typing in a name and a short name for that access point. And then from here, of course, we can associate with specific nerves, or we can leave that blank and go into the nerves tab and do that association here by picking the nerve and then adding the access point to that nerve. To set up specific nerves and muscles as commonly used, or to make it so that when you check that common box in the navigator, it filters down to the right muscles or nerves, all you need to do is go into the muscle or nerve, so pick muscle, and choose a muscle, and then over to the right you can highlight which tests that muscle is commonly used in. So for the APB, it's commonly used in EMG+. For ADM, I have it commonly used in all three test types. For nerves, if you look at the radial, I have that nerve set as commonly used. So you can go through, and that's how you pick. So suprascapular, if that's a nerve that's commonly used, you just highlight that, and now it'll show up in that when that common box is checked. So it's quite easy to set those up. Just when you have time, you'll want to go through all your muscles and make sure that you've set up your the muscles that use commonly as commonly used muscles in the appropriate tests. As far as the location of different nerves and muscles within the anatomical filter in the test setup, that's handled here as well. So if you look at nerves and you look at a median nerve, you can see all the different anatomical locations it will show up in. So if we click on the neck and shoulder, arm, forearm, or hand, the median nerve will show up in that list. You can also filter through your master list by hitting those filters. So forearm shows all the nerves that are set up in the forearm. It's easy to adjust those. All you have to do is, so for example, ulnar, if I don't want the ulnar to show up in the neck or shoulder, I just don't highlight that particular location, and now the ulnar nerve will only show up in these three locations. So it's pretty easy to go through and set up or change the location of different nerves and muscles in the anatomical filter in the navigator. So again, for muscle, same idea. When you pick a muscle, you can see which region, anatomical region, that muscle will show up in. So in this case, it's the thigh, and this is the foot. And so all that is customizable by you, as well as, of course, the roots, trunks, divisions, and cords. You can decide which muscles show up where for muscles, and then for nerves, of course, for your trunks and divisions and cords. So that's kind of a brief walkthrough of the anatomy database editor and the things that you can do within it.